There's a common misconception that aggression cases can be complicated and overwhelming, but I found that when you specialize in one particular area, you'll start to see the same types of cases over and over. In the last video, I talked about the typical aspects of working aggression cases that can make us feel like we're missing something or perhaps not affording the best strategies for our clients. I also mentioned I would take you through the steps of how I work an aggression case. So here we go. So of course, the first step in any aggression case is when the client reaches out to you, they contact you for help and maybe they're desperate, maybe their dog's just bitten somebody. And that's where we can build a lot of initial trust with that client by giving them initial recommendations for safety and management and potentially veterinary referral. We'll talk about the cases where I do refer immediately to a veterinarian in the course. And then, of course, when we get to their home or we meet with them online, we're going to go through the information gathering stage. That's where we're talking with the client and getting background about the case and the history of the behaviors. That's really one of the most crucial steps because we have to know the underlying cause for the behavior and what we can do to help that dog. So after the history taking stage, you're going to move into the observation and initial greeting with the dog whenever it's safe to do so. You're going to get a lot of information about the dog's behavior, and we don't need to see the aggressive behavior, of course. We can get all of the information we need through the history taking, but when we can set the environment well for the dog so they're not stressed, we can get information about how they interact with their owner, how they are trainable with the owner, body language. There's so much information you get during that observation stage that's going to allow us to craft our behavior change plans appropriately. Then usually I'll have the client put the dog away again safely and in an environment that's least stressful for the dog. And we're going to move through what's called the functional assessment. And I'm going to take you through the functional assessment throughout the course, but it's determining the antecedents for the behavior itself. So it's always something that's going to trigger that aggressive behavior, something in the environment. And we're going to be able to determine that after going through the history taking and some initial observations with the dogs. There are some internal things that can create aggressive behavior with dogs, but most of the time it's something in the environment that we're going to be able to identify that's going to allow us to help the client the most. After going through all of that, we've figured out why the dog is doing what they're doing. Now we have to talk about the client, about their goals and setting realistic expectations for everybody involved. Because if we're not on the same page as the clients, we're setting ourselves up for potential failure, for potential burnout and compassion fatigue. So it's really important to go through something called the prognosis, where you're looking at a number of variables. I look at actually 18 different components for assessing the severity of a case and the potential outcome based on those variables. It's also a great way to communicate with clients and giving them objective factors to look at in their own case to kind of determine what's going on and the overall severity. Next up, of course, you're going to move into management and safety, which is where you're helping the clients set things up so that the dog cannot display the aggressive behavior or bite anybody or any other animals. And of course, safety and management comes first in your aggression cases. Always start with safety and management because it's often the core of your behavior change plan. Next up, we'll talk about tools that we can use to assist with the training and behavior change. And I'm not just talking about training tools, I'm of course talking about reinforcers and what we can use to reinforce desirable alternative behaviors with the dog that's going to help them in the moments or the contexts in which they display aggressive behavior. So a classic one might be a dog that guards its food bowl. We're going to determine what's reinforcing for that dog, whether it's another high value food item or something else that we can use to teach the dog, do this instead of guarding your food bowl. Same thing for dogs that might be barking and lunging on leash. We're going to identify what tools we can use to help us in that context. So you might be talking about a particular harness, and again, reinforcers that I can use to increase or the frequency of desirable behaviors with that dog. And of course, with all aggression cases, we have to educate the client on body language And one of the tools I use to help me with that is a cell phone, because oftentimes we're working with a client and we can video the dog. And again, we're not videoing the overt aggressive behaviors. We're looking at the subtleties, those precursors, those stress signals that we're going to be able to show the client what it looks like when their dog is getting stressed. And when they can see those subtleties, they don't have to wait to see the more overt signals like barking, lunging, growling, snarling, snapping, or biting. When they can see the subtleties, they're going to be able to help their dog a lot more. So I do educate the clients about body language during my initial session with them. Next up, of course, is the behavior change part of things. So I'm moving through all these steps with the client, and then I get to what we're going to do to actually change the behavior. You're going to see strategies like differential reinforcement and desensitization and counter conditioning. And if you haven't heard of those terms, don't worry, I explain them in the course, and I try to keep it very simple. And finally, we're going to get into follow-up and fine-tuning with clients. So after we talk about behavior change, we give the clients the strategy to work with between that first session and then follow-up sessions. And of course, we might need to fine-tune things as we go along. So you can see how if you take those progressive structured steps in your initial consultation, I found that that's the best way to build trust and credibility with your client, because you're giving them immediate effective strategies for working with their dog. And you're going through a prognosis, so that way you can empathize with them and understand what they're going through, and setting a realistic expectation and goal for both of you. And so as you move through those steps, you've now built trust, you've established a plan for the client, and you're setting a roadmap for success for them. In the Aggression in Dogs Master Course, I share the exact details to work through each of these steps safely, efficiently, and effectively. The course provides a blueprint for working all aspects of aggression cases while showing you the flexibility to fine-tune as needed. So if that's something you're interested in, make sure you click on the link under this video and put your name on that early bird waitlist. Everybody on the early bird waitlist will get access to the registration link the night before the program launches to the public. In the next video, I will highlight a very basic technique that we can use to help dogs in the vast majority of aggression cases. And I'll give you a hint, it's easier than teaching a dog how to sit. So thanks for watching, and I'm looking forward to showing you some exciting things in the next video in this series.